Hello，各位大家好，欢迎各位同学来到好奇学生大灾问直播间。我是这期的节目主持人 Swing，目前是世界台湾学生会联合总会的副会长哦。那我们好奇学生大灾问每个月第一个周六都会做不同的主题直播，并邀请各领域资深嘉宾来分享经验，帮大家增长见闻。主要领域为科技及教育，是一个属于知识型的直播间哦。那在正式开始之前，我们欢迎各位同学、各位朋友订阅我们好奇学生大灾问的频道，也不妨按下小铃铛，以接受第一手消息和观看最新一期的节目。我们今天的嘉宾有点不同以往，他是来自美国的 Alyssa Carson。Alyssa 从小就有一个不平凡的梦想，她梦想登上火星。所以当童年时期别人在玩乐时，她已经参加过18次太空营队。并在2016年成为美国国际太空大学史上最年轻的毕业生。美国太空总署 NASA 也在他18岁之前特意培训他，目标成为未来第一批登陆火星的太空人。而现在他上过 TED Talk， 也考取许多太空人必备的执照，继续朝着他的太空梦发热呢。那我们现在就来正式欢迎。So let us welcome our special guest today, Alyssa Carson, the youngest guest we have for the show. Hi, Alyssa. So, are you able to introduce yourself in Mandarin for us?
Sure. 你好，我的名字是艾丽莎，我喜欢太空和公开演讲。
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, and thanks for coming. 那除了 Alyssa 以外，我们今天还有2位好奇学生。那先让他们自我介绍。一达。
嗨，大家好，我是 Vito 李益达，今天要担任好奇学生，我是来自交通大学大4的学生，请多指教。
好，谢谢益达，谢谢你来参加我们的节目。那接下来是 Eric。
嗨，大家好，我是 Eric。那我是目前就读于中央大学太空科学研究所的朱文平。对，那我是 Eric， 大家好。
好，也感谢 Eric 来参加我们的节目。那我听了前面我的介绍，我想大家都迫不及待想知道这位太空女孩的心路及成长历程吧。那我想我就话不多说，我们开始今天的访问。那首先有请 Eric 来做我们第一个题目。
Okay. Hi, Alyssa. I'm studying in the Graduate Institute of Space Science and Engineering from National Central University right now. So I got a huge interest on space as well. So this will be my first question. Why are you interested in Mars or space? Is it because it gains your sense of achievement?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I have kind of always been interested in space and kind of in the idea of traveling to Mars. When I was younger, I was interested kind of in just why, what was on Mars, the curiosity of it, why we'd want to go, that kind of thing. As I've gotten older, I've learned a lot more about the benefits of going to Mars and all the awesome science that kind of comes along with that. And so that has further inspired me to want to kind of keep this dream alive and keep the idea of possibly being an astronaut one day.
Oh, wow, that's great. Because my parents always ask me the same questions, but I honestly, I don't know how to explain why I'm really like outer space. Okay, so we know you are a college student right now. So what your next step from here?
Yeah, totally. I mean, obviously, there are so many ways to become an astronaut, so many different things to kind of go into and study. Kind of just the path that I've chosen based on what I'm interested in has kind of just ended up more of like a citizen scientist kind of path. So really right now it's just sticking through college, sticking through my education, as well as building some other skills along the way. So possibly, continuing to build on my pilot's license that I've gotten, maybe do some some more scuba, maybe, you know, do any sort of activity that could help build a resume or something that could be beneficial on the resume in the future. So really just kind of progressing and adding on to anything that I can or anything that I've done to this point.
Oh, cool. Are you going to study for got a PhD?
Well, there definitely are many different options. So recently, or not too long ago, the requirements to actually become an astronaut has kind of escalated a little bit. So now you have to have at least a master's degree in order to kind of enter into this application and like selection process. So I will most definitely be going after a master's, which I was most likely planning on doing anyway, to be honest. But yeah, I will definitely get a master's. And then as far as PhD, I guess I'll see at that point. I guess I'll kind of judge how tired of school I am by that point. But I mean, it isn't something that I'll necessarily turn away from. I think it just kind of depends on like where I'm at that time. You know, it could be something I pursue later in life. I'm not exactly sure yet, but definitely a master's for now, at least to get me applying. But it is possibly something that I could look at.
Oh, thanks. So I'm wondering your training from the Mars. What is your training for Mars mission, and what are the requirements for becoming an astronaut?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, all the different awesome like trainings and experiences and things like that I've gone to do, none of them are necessary or required to enter in the selection process. So, actually, to apply, all you actually need is a master's degree. You need a little bit of work experience, maybe a few years of work experience. If you're a pilot, it's 1,000 hours of flying, and then pass the physical that they kind of throw at you and you have to go through. So, the actual requirements isn't actually too long of a list, but all the amazing trainings and experiences and research projects that I've been able to do have all been through Project Possum, which is kind of a citizen science research organization. So a whole bunch of everyday people contributing to science and experiments. But you know, it's real life stuff. You know, we're able to work with spacesuits, we're able to do water survival training, we're able to do microgravity flights, and all these kind of exciting things that is very similar to what the astronauts actually do, but we're able to do it for research and for science. So that has been really cool to actually be a part of that and almost jumpstart some of these trainings and some of these experiences that the astronauts get to do once they're selected.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, is that all the question from you, Eric?
Yeah, I already, you know.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, is that all the answer to the question, Alyssa?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you know, all the different things I've done obviously have can go in so much detail into all of them, but for the most part, that has kind of like been the major ones for me, is kind of the things with Possum, which have kind of been the most specific. As far as like training specifically for Mars at that point, or at this point, you know, I'm not necessarily training specifically for Mars, necessarily kind of just getting introduced into the whole astronaut experience. But as far as actually training for specifically for Mars, the idea would be, you know, after the selection process, and possibly, you know, being selected as an astronaut, at that point, I would go through basic astronaut training. After that point, I could be selected for a mission to which I would actually train directly for a Mars mission and have more specific trainings at that point. But kind of the travel to Mars and everything like that, we're still kind of working out all the details kind of over the next few years and getting that all straightened out to figure out what specific trainings we may want to have in preparing for a mission to Mars.
Yeah, cool. That's very good. So just one extra question from me. So you say you're going to do master, right? And if there's a chance you'll do PhD. I was just wondering what PhD degree you would like to get.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, right now,
Right.
right now I'm studying astrobiology, which has been really amazing and really interesting and stuff. As far as like a master's, it'll probably be in more of like kind of more general, just like space science kind of area, but definitely still relating to space. So for my PhD, I probably would consider some sort of astrobiology PhD, or if not in that, definitely just something space related. I mean, definitely my area of interest in space has a lot to do with just kind of the research we can do with space. And obviously with astrobiology, a big talk is life in space, whether that is, bringing bacterias, finding bacterias, or even plants, or, what we can actually do to planets, or, the opportunities there are with planets, studying to see which planets are actually habitable. So there's a whole lot of areas in that kind of realm. So it could be in some sort of planetary science. There's a good bit of options. So I don't know how they're ended up with so many different majors relating to space, but there actually are.
That's great. Good luck. Okay, cool. Let's welcome our next student, Vito, for your questions.
Okay. So Alyssa, you actually have a published book, right? So you want to be an astronaut. Go buy it. So actually, I bought your book, and it's an ebook because I can't find any books in Taiwan. I can't really find it. So I purchased your ebook online on Amazon. And after reading your book, I found out that you learn space stuff on YouTube. And for me, the only space stuff I learned from YouTube is from a YouTuber called like Mark Rober. And he does this kind of cool stuff. And but what I want to ask you is like, what kind of content do you watch on YouTube to learn these things?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that nowadays with the internet kind of in general, we have a good bit of resources kind of like at our hands to be able to learn new information, about space or about whatever our interests may be. And so, I definitely remember when I was younger, one thing that I used to watch all the time for some reason was rovers landing on Mars. That was something that I was really interested in when I was younger. And obviously I didn't understand everything exactly, but I was, understanding some concepts. So, there used to be kind of this design with the rovers that would land on Mars. They would have almost like these big, puff balls that would balloon up, and the rovers would bounce while they land. They would almost just crash land and just kind of bounce their way across Mars. And so, as a little girl, I would think, oh, that's how people are going to land. We're just going to bounce across Mars. And so, I started out by learning things by just watching those videos, or, some of the content that I watch could be, whether it's a launch happening, watching the SpaceX launch. It's so amazing that we're actually able to just watch that on YouTube and, be up in the faces of the astronauts and see what they're doing and all the different aspects. So I think in general, there's a huge amount of space content on YouTube. So just kind of be willing to go and kind of search some of that, because it's always exciting to see what's happening in space, and any sort of content or information that you can learn off of that, because the start of pursuing any dream is learning a little bit about it, a little bit about the career or what you're interested in going into.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, okay, and so on to the next question. So you said in your book that you plan to achieve like 3 skills that are fundamental and essential in astronaut application, which are scuba diving, piloting planes, and skydiving. And have you actually achieved them all before 18?
Yeah, so a lot of these skills that I kind of wanted or set almost as like a personal goal for myself to want to do before 18 was really just trying to do things that could relate to space in any way without actually, being involved with the space agency or doing anything too complicated. So all of these different skills can relate to the space industry in some way. So it was really cool. So for example, like scuba diving, you can actually start when you're like 14 or something like that. So that was a really awesome way to kind of be introduced. When you're underwater, that's the easiest way we can simulate long-term microgravity here on Earth. So you know how your friends are like lighter in the water and that kind of thing. So just kind of gain those sensations. Also having like the mental idea of, you have so much oxygen, you're breathing off of something. And you have to watch, your oxygen levels and things like that. Space is the same way. You have your oxygen. If you're outside the spacecraft, you have to be watching that. And so it kind of introduces these very simple skills. I also want to get my pilot's license. Although I am looking at taking more of like a scientist track, I was interested in having at least some flying skills. I'm not necessarily doing it professionally, but at least, having an understanding of how it all works and how, the pilots will be flying, or, having an understanding of that, because it's important to kind of be well-rounded as an astronaut. So I was able to do that, which is super exciting. And then skydiving, I was able to go once. I still need to kind of get back at it and actually get fully certified. But yeah, I was able to go skydiving, which I wasn't able to do till I was 18. But nonetheless, it was still super exciting to kind of have the experience of free falling and that kind of sense of microgravity in some way, but also just kind of the idea of like that adrenaline rush of doing something crazy. So that was pretty awesome.
Wow. It is really my dream to go skydiving. It's really cool, right? Well, as for the piloting planes, what are the, like, is it possible to receive that kind of skill in a short amount of time? Because for me,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah,
only, yeah, yeah, you go on.
Yeah, totally. I mean, as far as getting a pilot's license, it is really kind of all about you and your own schedule. So, kind of, if you are interested in doing it, you can kind of get it. It depends on the amount of time you're able to kind of put into it. So obviously, the more you fly, the faster you're going to get your license. So I mean, if you're able to, you know, put in the time and go every single day out to the airport and go flying and build upon your skills, you're going to get it a lot faster than someone who may go once a week. And so, you know, for me, it took a good bit of time. I think it ended up taking a little less than a year. But that was mainly because, you know, I travel a good bit. And so I kind of working around school and traveling and that kind of thing, it wasn't necessarily something that I could go out and do every single day. But, you know, definitely if you do have that time to dedicate to it, you can kind of fly through it pretty quickly, surprisingly.
Okay. Last question according to this topic. Have you received your final? I mean, there's like, you go for scuba diving. I know I have my scuba diving license, but it's only the lesser grade. Is it right? And there's a
Right.
higher grade, right? So have you earned that?
Yeah, so I mean, for example, in scuba diving, there are different levels of certifications that you can get. So there's kind of like the beginner scuba diver, there's advanced, you can work all the way to master diver. There's also other like small things that you can get. You can become a rescue diver or a cave diver, or you can get certified on certain types of oxygen. And so it is, you know, so many different things that you can actually go into and get certified in. So I've done advanced, so I'm an advanced diver, which just kind of requires a few more skills and just kind of more experience going out and doing a few more dives than the beginners. But yeah, you can actually work your way all the way to master diver. So, you know, that is something I could possibly do eventually and getting around to that. But diving was kind of another thing that, you know, I did want that skill. But, you know, I kind of do it just for fun, just for recreation. And at the same time, I do enjoy it. It's always nice to kind of just go see what's under the water, and even doing some, you know, possibly non-related to space dives, you know, going out. I did a coral dive, a coral restoration dive where we were actually planting corals. So all sorts of new experiences with all of these different skills.
Okay. I guess I'll work on that in the future. Okay, so final question. So you are planning to take the civilian route, right, in becoming an astronaut, and you said in your book and that there is a military route. And so what is exactly the military route, and what are the differences?
Yeah, totally. So, like I was saying earlier, you know, there are so many different ways to become an astronaut. It really all just kind of depends on your personal interests and, you know, how what you're interested in can relate to space. So typically the way it kind of has worked is that typically people can go into the military, and after, you know, going through the military, learning those skills and things like that, they'll apply to the astronaut corps. And, you know, in the beginning, most of the astronauts were coming from the military because they just assumed that those were the kind of people that had the right skills to eventually become astronauts. But typically the way it works is most of those people who come from the military are typically your pilots and your commanders. So that's usually the positions that they will hold when they do become an astronaut. A lot of the civilians are more of your scientists, researchers, maybe, you know, robotics, you know, those kind of interests, just because that's not necessarily something you would get as much experience in the military. You know, there is some, so we do have, you know, some people from the military who do, you know, dabble in those things as well, or have that as, you know, their role in the military. But for the most part, most of the military astronauts did end up flying or have flight experience, whereas the civilians are more scientists and those kinds of aspects. But in the space program, we do have to draw from both areas because it's important to have your pilots, and then it's also important to have scientists, gain people who have medical, experience, maybe someone who studied medicine. So there's all sorts of different areas that you can actually research and go into and then eventually apply.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Thank you, Vito. So I was just wondering. So Vito said you published a book, right? So what makes you want to publish your own book?
Right, totally. So it was a whole new experience. For me, kind of being able to talk to so many kids and inspire so many kids, something that I hear so frequently is that, there are so many kids who want to become astronauts. And, I've definitely felt that the whole idea of becoming an astronaut is very distant. It doesn't feel realistic. It doesn't seem like something that you can legitimately do. And so I kind of wanted to try to clear that up a little bit. And at the same time, it's always been amazing to be able to talk to these kids and, help them figure it out. But at the same time, I always thought of it as somewhat of a personal journey. There's not necessarily a checklist that I can give out to everyone, like you have to study this and go to this university. There's nothing that specific about becoming an astronaut. It all depends on what you're interested in. And so the book was kind of an easy way to kind of guide someone through that rather than me trying to have a conversation with every kid who wants to become an astronaut. An easy way to help them kind of figure out, maybe what they're interested in or how they can build on that, or simple skills that they can use to actually go after those dreams. And so it was just kind of a way to hopefully reach more kids and inspire more kids to pursue whatever their crazy dreams may be.
Oh, that's awesome. So I was just wondering, when you told your family that you want to become an astronaut, what did they think for it? Did they support you, or did they just like, nah, it's like good?
Yeah, totally. I mean, when I first mentioned it, I was super young at the time. So my dad obviously didn't necessarily realize that this would be something that I would still be doing now at 19. But, he said, if it's something you want to do, sure, go for it. But like I said, he didn't necessarily think it was something that I was actually going to do. But, he still got me some space books and got me, a few things to kind of support my interests, whatever. Again, he wasn't really thinking too much about it. It wasn't really until I got to go to space camp, my dad had gotten the opportunity to go with me. So we did like a parent-child, almost like a family camp. And so there, he kind of saw me, I guess, blossom and just kind of be so in love with space and just obsessed with everything and absorbing all this information and just loving every second of it. And so that was kind of the point where he realized that this was something that maybe I could actually do, that was something maybe more realistic than what he had first pursued. But, now it's been really amazing to kind of have him. We've continued to travel everywhere together, do everything together. So it's been really awesome to kind of have that support from my dad specifically, but also kind of the rest of my family.
I see. So you have a good dad, hey. So in this whole year, like the 19 years you grew up, have you ever think of giving up? Or is there any hard time, and how did you go through it?
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, having the idea of becoming an astronaut and going to Mars at kind of the age I did was definitely a crazy dream. When I was talking about wanting to be an astronaut and go to Mars, no one was talking about Mars. No one had any plans of going to Mars back then. And so it was definitely a dream that wasn't possible. And luckily, it has slowly become more and more of a reality. But definitely throughout the way, it's kind of always been a test to see if this was something that I could do. I always felt, if I went to space camp and I couldn't handle something, it was always, maybe I shouldn't continue working on it. And so it was kind of always that pressure of seeing, if I can't do this, maybe I shouldn't continue. And so I definitely felt a lot of pressure to kind of push through everything because it was something that I wanted to do. So there have been moments, especially, now looking at schooling and things like that, keeping up with classes. As far as like the education side, all those sciences definitely can get pretty complicated. So I'm really just trying to jump through all the hoops of, all the education and also all the different trainings I do. There's been plenty of cases that I've been absolutely terrified to do some of the things I've done, but it's been amazing to kind of have a support system to kind of keep pushing me, and then also just kind of pushing myself to, you know, really realize that if it is something that I really want to do, I have to keep working towards it.
Okay, cool. I think that's all for the question today. So Alyssa, we really appreciate your time being here as our guest. So before we end, do you have anything you would like to say to our audience to encourage them to chase their dream?
Yeah, totally. You know, I think right now is such a amazing and cool time to start getting interested in space because there is so much going on. You know, I think we are kind of coming up close to almost like an explosion in space with so many people going, especially now with the private industry coming into play. You know, I think now we have so many plans as far as, you know, NASA's plans, but also all the agencies around the world. You know, they're starting to, I guess, get more excited and do more things in space. Like I said, again, with the private industry, I think that we're going to have more people working in the space industry, going to space and all that. So, you know, if it is a dream of yours, or if you have another dream that maybe doesn't relate to space as well, it's really just important to kind of figure out what that is and really go after it. You know, don't be afraid to start young about learning about it and seeing what it might take. And kind of my biggest advice to give to you guys is really to talk about your dreams, because you never really know where those opportunities are going to come from. So reach out to people and, you know, tell them that's something you're interested in, and really just stick with it, follow your dreams, and never let someone take it away from you, because although it may sound impossible, it could become a reality someday.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you for today. 好，那我这边做一个小总结。我想在大家听完 Alyssa 她的梦想之后呢，可能大家会觉得说，哦，自己也曾经有一个太空梦啊，或自己有一个梦想，可是就是没有去实现。那我觉得对于我们这一辈的年轻人，梦想是一个很好的东西，就是他们会让我们觉得就是比较朝气蓬勃。可是就是很遗憾的是，就是你的梦想可能会就是被就是这社会去毁灭，就是人家会去质疑你的梦想。那我一直都觉得啊，我看过这样的一段话，就是梦想是一个证明题，它不是一个选择题。就是我不知道你有什么，就是观众现在在看这位有什么逐梦的计划。那如果有人陪你的话，那很好。那如果没有的话，我觉得你们就是可以看看像 Alyssa 她的就是奋斗过程啊，就是大家就是要打起精神，然后大步向前迈进。就是没有，就是其实周围没有人陪你，有时候没有吵闹，你可能会进步得更快。那我想这是今天的一个小总结。那最后我再说一下我们的好奇学生大哉问，它固定于每个月的第一周星期六早上11点到11点半播出。那想要得到更多的资讯呢，可以搜寻我们的网址 www.technologyandlife.com， 或者就是我们的影片下方说明栏也有我们的网址，也可以加入我们的官方 LINE 好奇学生大哉问。那再次感谢我们今天的同学Vito, Eric and Alyssa, thank you for coming today。那喜欢我们的节目的话，记得要去订阅。那我们今天在下方的连结也会放上 Alyssa 她的书的连结，大家如果有兴趣对她的书的话，可以去购买她的 ebook。那最后说一下我们的 slogan， 大胆的提问才能成就非凡的未来。那感谢各位同学的参与，我们下次见。Bye everyone. Thank you for coming today.